lit. A man sits at a wooden desk, writing through the night. His name is Fyodor Dostoevsky, and what he is writing will change how the world understands the human mind. Not through theories, not through diagnosis, through characters who think too much, who suffer too deeply, who cannot escape their own consciousness. Have you ever noticed that some of the heaviest thoughts arrive when everything else goes quiet? That the mind you live with every day can sometimes feel like a stranger? Tonight, we are going to sit with one of literature's darkest thinkers, not because his work is grim, but because he understood something most people spend their lives avoiding. He understood that suffering is not always a problem to solve. Sometimes it is a door, and on the other side of that door is a kind of freedom most people never reach. Dostoevsky did not write philosophy textbooks. He wrote novels about people who could not stop thinking, people whose minds turned against them, people who committed crimes not for money or passion, but to test an idea. And through these characters, he mapped the architecture of guilt, rebellion, confession, and redemption in ways that psychology would not catch up to for another century. This is not a lecture about Russian literature. This is a conversation about your mind, about the voice that will not let you rest, the mistake you cannot stop replaying, the weight of a choice you made years ago that still sits in your chest at night. Dostoevsky spent his entire life exploring one question: what happens when a person becomes too aware of their own existence, when they can no longer live on autopilot, when every action requires justification, when the mind turns inward and finds not peace, but chaos. He called this the underground consciousness. And if you have ever lain awake at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation, revising what you should have said, feeling the weight of everything you are not, you already know what he meant. Let your shoulders drop for a moment. You do not need to solve anything right now. We are simply going to walk through the rooms Dostoevsky built in his novels. Rooms where people wrestled with freedom, morality, meaning, and the unbearable weight of being alive. And by the end, something may shift. Not because suffering becomes easier, but because you may finally understand what it has been trying to tell you all along. Chapter 2, The Underground Consciousness. There is a character in Dostoevsky's work who lives beneath the floorboards of normal life. Not literally, but psychologically. He is the underground man, and he is one of the most uncomfortable characters ever written. Not because he is violent, not because he is cruel in obvious ways, but because he thinks too much. He is hyper-aware of every social interaction, every glance, every slight. He rehearses conversations endlessly. He plans revenge for minor insults. He despises himself and everyone else in equal measure. And here is the disturbing part. He knows all of this about himself. He watches his own mind spiral. He sees the pettiness, the self-sabotage, the endless inner monologue, and he cannot stop. Dostoevsky wrote this character in 1864, long before Freud, long before the language of psychology existed. But he understood something that modern therapy is still trying to articulate. He understood that awareness does not always heal. Sometimes awareness is the wound. Think of the last time you caught yourself in a thought pattern you did not like. Maybe you were being unfair to someone. Maybe you were catastrophizing. Maybe you were rehearsing an argument that would never happen. And you noticed it. You saw yourself doing it. But you kept doing it anyway. That is the underground consciousness. It is the part of you that watches yourself fail and cannot intervene. The underground man is not mentally ill in the clinical sense. He is functional, he goes to work, he pays his bills. But inside, he is at war with himself. And the war never ends because both sides are him. Dostoevsky believed that modern life, with its emphasis on reason, progress, and rational self-interest, was creating a new kind of suffering. Not the suffering of poverty or disease, the suffering of self-awareness without purpose, the suffering of a mind that has nothing to do but observe itself. And here is the quieter layer beneath that. The underground man does not want to be cured. He clings to his suffering because it is the only thing that makes him feel real. His pain is proof that he exists, that he matters, that he is not just another cog in the rational machinery of society. This is where Dostoevsky's psychology becomes uncomfortably modern. How many people do you know? How many times have you yourself held onto a grievance, a regret, a story of victimhood, long past the point where it served you? Not because you could not let go, but because letting go would mean admitting that the suffering was meaningless, and meaningless suffering is unbearable. So we make it mean something, we justify it, we rehearse it, we build our identity around it. The underground man is not a villain, he is a warning about what happens when the mind turns inward and finds no exit. Notice the weight of your body where it rests. Let the next breath come a little slower. The story is not over, but you do not need to carry it all at once. Chapter 3, Hyper-Awareness and Self-Torment. Imagine standing in a room full of people. You say something, a joke, a comment, something meant to be light, and the moment it leaves your mouth, you feel it land wrong. The silence is half a second too long. Someone's expression shifts. The conversation moves on, but your mind does not. For the rest of the night, and maybe the rest of the week, you replay that moment. What did I mean by that? How did it sound? What do they think of me now? Should I apologize? Would apologizing make it worse? This is they suffer not from what happens to them, but from their interpretation of what happens.
I say that
The
all the
underground
time.
man describes it as being too conscious. Most people, he says, live on instinct. They act without endless deliberation. They move through the world without interrogating every motive. But for him, and maybe for you, every action requires justification. Every choice becomes a moral dilemma. Every conversation becomes a performance you are watching yourself give. And the watching ruins the doing. Here is what it feels like inside. You are at dinner with friends, you are laughing, you are present. But there is a second layer running underneath. A narrator in your head whispering, "Am I laughing too loud? Do I sound fake? Are they noticing that I am trying too hard? Should I have ordered something different?" The experience splits. You are both the actor and the audience. And the audience is cruel. Dostoevsky wrote about this in the 1860s. But it sounds like a description of modern anxiety. The pressure to perform authenticity, the exhaustion of being self-aware, the sense that everyone else is moving through life effortlessly while you are stuck analyzing the mechanics of being human. A psychiatrist named Irvin Yalom would later write about this same phenomenon. He called it self-consciousness as a barrier to experience. The more you watch yourself, the less you can actually live. Dostoevsky did not offer a solution in Notes from Underground. That book ends in paralysis. The underground man does not change. He does not heal. He stays underground. But there is something we have not yet touched, and it changes everything. Because Dostoevsky did not stop with that character. He went deeper. He asked, what if hyper-awareness is not a curse? What if it is the beginning of something? What if the mind that torments you is also the mind trying to wake you up? Hold that gently. We will return to it. For now, just notice your breath. You are still here. That is enough. Chapter 4, Freedom Against Reason. In the middle of the 19th century, a philosophy was sweeping Europe. It said, human beings are rational creatures. Give them education, give them science, give them logic, and they will build a perfect society. All suffering, all conflict, all irrationality, these were just problems waiting to be solved. Dostoevsky hated this idea, not because he was against reason, not because he romanticized ignorance, but because he understood something that the rationalists refused to see. He understood that human beings do not actually want perfect happiness. What they want is freedom, even if that freedom destroys them. The underground man makes this argument in the most provocative way possible. He says, give me a world where every need is met, a crystal palace of perfect logic and comfort, and I will smash it. Not because I am ungrateful, not because I do not understand that it is good for me, but because I refuse to be a key in a piano. I refuse to be predictable. I refuse to surrender my will, even if my will leads me to ruin. This is one of the most disturbing ideas in all of philosophy, and it is also one of the most honest. Think about the last time you did something you knew was bad for you. Stayed up too late scrolling. Ate the thing that would make you feel worse. Sent the text you knew you would regret. Picked the fight you did not need to have. You knew better. You are not stupid. But in that moment, you chose it anyway. Why? Because some part of you needed to prove that you still had the power to choose. Even if the choice was self-destructive. Dostoevsky called this the revolt against 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 does equal 4. That is rational. That is true. But if you tell a human being that they must accept it, that they have no choice, they will find a way to make it equal 5, just to prove they are free. This is not celebrated, this is not healthy, but it is human. A man named Viktor Frankl would later discover this same truth in a very different place. In the concentration camps, he observed that the people who survived longest were not always the strongest or the most rational. They were the ones who held on to some small act of defiance, a hidden piece of bread, a mental image they refused to surrender, a choice, however small, that reminded them they were still human. Because without choice, without the ability to say no, survival loses its meaning. Dostoevsky understood this decades earlier. He understood that freedom is not just a political idea. It is a psychological need so deep that people will sabotage their own happiness to protect it. And this is where the psychology of suffering begins to make a strange kind of sense. Let your jaw soften. The ideas are heavy, but they do not need to be carried all at once. Chapter 5, The Revolt Against Rationalism. There is a story Dostoevsky tells in Notes from Underground. A man is given a list of his own best interests. Everything on the list is true. Everything is logical. If he follows the list, his life will improve. And he burns the list. Not because he disagrees with it, but because being told what is good for him feels like a chain. This is the revolt, not against truth, not against reason, against the idea that truth and reason are enough, because human beings are not machines. And a life optimized for efficiency is not the same as a life worth living. Dostoevsky was writing in response to the utopian socialists of his time. People who believed that if you just structured society correctly, if you eliminated poverty, ignorance, and superstition, human nature would improve.
Hey, Sunny Day.
Crime
Bye, Sunny
would
Day.
disappear. Suffering would end. Everyone would act in enlightened self-interest. Dostoevsky thought this
I want to
was not
warn
just
everybody.
wrong. He thought it was
If you
dangerous
plan on ever watching my
because it
content,
ignored
if you
the
plan on,
irrational
let me
core.
pause this for a second, because I think people have the wrong idea. I see people laughing in the comments. If you think this is funny, you have every right to leave and do not come back again. But what you don't have a right to do is to come and make a comment that's disrespectful. I won't allow it, because I'm human too. Even though I see past the projections, I still don't want to see the disrespect, because I'm working on myself too. I wouldn't sit here and lie to y'all and tell y'all, oh, well, I'm perfect. I got this down pat. I'd be lying if I said that. If somebody walked up to me right now and said something kind of crazy out the way, and they even brushed me the wrong way, we'll be on the floor. So don't ever assume that I am at my full self. I am still working on it. So when I see people say like little funny comments and trying to troll, I'm not even going to address you. I'm just going to make sure you don't get the comment no more. And that's just that on that. And if I feel like it's really bad, I just remove you from the page completely. I got the power to do that over here. This is my channel. So I choose to channel what I want to channel. I choose to vibe with what I want to vibe with. And if this is what I'm listening to today, and people who like me are interested, want to listen to it, then they can sit here. But those of you who think it's stupid, who don't understand this type of thinking, please leave. Do not leave weird comments, because it's going to get removed. Then if I notice that it's very vulgar, you'll probably get banned and blocked from the page. It's not worth it. You know how it feels to see something and then go find out you can't see it no more. I mean, to you, it might, I don't care. You saying you don't care, but you care enough to make a comment, so you care. You care. Because if you didn't care, you wouldn't even make a comment. So I will advise you, be nice. I'm going to go ahead and hide yours too. I'm not tolerating no disrespect going forward. This is 2026. Anybody doing any shady business around me, you will be ignored. You will be blocked. I don't entertain trolls. I don't entertain bullies. None of that. I don't entertain oppressors. I don't entertain predators. I don't entertain manipulators. None of those people exist in my realm. So when I see the low vibration, I'm picking it out like a star in my eye. So you're welcome to sit here and listen for the next 8 minutes, or you can find something safe to do.
Of human nature, the part that wants, the part that resents, the part that chooses badly just to feel alive. A thinker named Soren Kierkegaard was exploring this same idea around the same time. He wrote about anxiety as the dizziness of freedom, the feeling you get when you realize that your life is not determined, that you could do anything, that there is no script. And that feeling is not always liberating. Sometimes it is terrifying, because if you are free, then you are responsible. And if you are responsible, then every choice you make or fail to make is yours to carry. Think about a decision you have been avoiding, something you know you should do or should not do. The decision itself is probably clear, rational, obvious, but you are not making it. Why? Maybe because making it would mean accepting that you are the author of your own life, that you cannot blame circumstances or bad timing or other people, that if you choose and it goes wrong, it is on you. Dostoevsky believed that this is the real human condition, not ignorance, not oppression, but the unbearable weight of freedom and the strategies we use to escape it. We follow rules we do not believe in. We stay in situations that harm us. We give our power to leaders, systems, routines, anything that will make the decision for us. Not because we are weak, but because freedom without meaning is a kind of hell. And this leads to the question beneath the question. What if suffering is not the opposite of freedom? What if suffering is the price we pay for refusing it? Let the stillness hold you for a moment. There is more to this, and it unfolds gently from here. Chapter 6, Crime as Moral Experiment.
I believe I did that. I believe I did that in my life. I had some trauma in my life.
Published a novel.
I had severe trauma in my life, y'all, and I turned that shit into lemonade. I swear I was giving lemons. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't take what he's saying. I didn't take my suffering and I didn't live it. I literally used it to motivate me. I did not leave my suffering to put me in a position where I felt like I was hopeless. I more so took my suffering as a reason to say, well, I will not suffer like this again. I will not allow myself to be in a position to suffer like that again. And I have always been successful in life, even when it comes to like relationships or friendships or whatever. I know where my limit is with people, to where the suffering that I experienced when I was younger, I never will ever experience again. And I actually use that today to help me configure myself in life in a positive way. I turn my suffering into something positive. Some people have a gift of turning their trauma into like it's alchemy. It's like you're an alchemist. You become an alchemist when you can take something bad and turn it into something good. Okay.
That would become one of the most psychologically penetrating works in literature, Crime and Punishment. It is not a detective story. It is not a thriller. It is a study of what happens inside a mind that decides to cross a line. The protagonist is a young man named Raskolnikov. He is brilliant, poor, isolated, and he has an idea. The idea is this: some people are extraordinary. Some people are above ordinary morality. Napoleon, Caesar, the great men of history. They broke laws, they caused suffering, but they changed the world. And Raskolnikov believes he might be one of them. So he tests the...
That reminds me of the movie Split, and what is it? When Glass with Samuel L. Jackson and Split, Bruce Willis, and he said, "I make superheroes. I'm such a fucking mastermind. I make superheroes." That line he just said just made me think of that.
Theory. He plans a murder, not out of rage, not out of greed. And remain psychologically intact. Can he prove that he is exceptional? He kills an old pawnbroker, a woman he tells himself is worthless, a parasite, someone the world would not miss. And here is what Dostoevsky captures with devastating precision: the moment after. The moment when Raskolnikov realizes that the crime was not the hard part. Living with himself afterward is. Because the mind does not work the way he thought it would. He assumed that if his reasoning was sound,
different,
his conscience would follow.
Okay.
But conscience does not care about
No
logic.
reason.
It speaks in sensations,
In facts,
in dreams, in a visceral disgust that he cannot rationalize away. Imagine making a choice you believed was right. A choice you justified to yourself with every reasonable argument. And then, in the quiet afterward, your body disagrees. Your hands shake. Your sleep breaks. A weight settles in your chest that no amount of thinking can lift. This is the gap Dostoevsky is exploring. The gap between intellectual conviction and embodied consequence. You can convince your mind of almost anything, but your nervous system knows the truth. Raskolnikov spends the entire novel trying to outthink his guilt. He argues with himself, he rewrites the narrative, he finds new justifications. But the guilt does not speak in words. It speaks in fever.
And that tells you right there, you don't need a Bible to tell you not to kill nobody. He literally just said, he just tried to make himself believe that his reason for unaliving somebody was justified by the means because it was an experiment. He really didn't have any ill feelings towards the person, but it did not stop the fact that he felt like crap afterwards. Exactly. And that's why I cannot understand when people say some people just evil. No. Some people are just really hurts, and they only think that if they hurt others, it will give some type of satisfaction for them. And in reality, it does, because it's like, I'm not the only one hurting. And I took somebody else's power. I did this, you know? I got a few minutes. Oh, I don't got them on. I'm sorry, I had to play some in the background. Here you go.
In paranoia, in the sense that the walls are closing in. A psychiatrist named Bessel van der Kolk would later write that trauma lives in the body, that the mind can forget, deny, rationalize, but the body keeps the score. Dostoevsky knew this 150 years earlier. He knew that moral transgression is not just a legal problem or a social problem, it is a nervous system problem. And no amount of philosophy can override the way your body responds to betraying itself. Notice the air moving in and out. You do not have to hold all of this at once. The story continues. But so does your breath. Chapter 7, Raskolnikov's Divided Mind. After the murder, Raskolnikov becomes two people. One version of him insists the act was justified, necessary, a step toward his greatness. The other version is drowning in shame, and neither version can win, because both are him. This is what Dostoevsky understood about guilt, that most moral philosophy misses. Guilt is not just feeling bad about what you did. Guilt is the mind splitting against itself. It is knowing you are the person who did that thing, and also knowing you are the person who would never do that thing, and having to live with both truths at once. Raskolnikov walks through the streets of St. Petersburg like a ghost. He is there, but not there. He hears conversations, but cannot focus. He is interrogated by a detective, and part of him wants to confess immediately, not for moral reasons, but for relief. Because the divided mind is exhausting. Have you ever carried a secret? Not a fun secret, a heavy one. Something you did, something you failed to do, something you know would change how people see you if they knew. And you notice how it splits your attention. Half of you is having the conversation. The other half is making sure you do not slip, making sure the secret stays buried. You are performing normalcy. And it is tiring. Raskolnikov is performing sanity, but his mind is unraveling. Dostoevsky describes it as a fever, a delirium. But it is not a medical condition. It is the psychological cost of trying to be two incompatible things at once. A murderer who is above morality, and a human being who cannot escape it. One scene captures this perfectly. Raskolnikov visits the scene of the crime days later. He stands in the room where it happened, and he asks the workers there, "Where is the blood. They tell him it was cleaned days ago, but he keeps asking. He is obsessed with it, because the blood is not really gone. It is inside him, and no amount of external cleaning will remove it. This is where Dostoevsky becomes almost unbearably modern. He's describing what we now call intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, the way trauma loops. Raskolnikov cannot stop replaying the moment, cannot stop seeing her face, cannot stop hearing the sound. And every time he tries to push it away, it comes back stronger. One thinker from much later, Carl Jung, would say that what you resist persists, that the parts of yourself you refuse to face do not disappear. They go underground, and they run your life from there. Raskolnikov resists his guilt. He intellectualizes it. He argues against it. But it does not go away. It grows, until the only way forward is the one he has been avoiding all along. And here is the small detail that changes it. The path out of the divided mind is not more thinking. It is something he has not yet tried. Let your shoulders drop. The weight does not have to be carried in your body right now. Chapter 8. Guilt as inner tribunal. Guilt in Dostoevsky's world is not imposed from outside. It is not the law. It is not society. It is not even God, at least not at first. It is something that rises from within. An inner tribunal that convenes the moment you cross a line you did not know was there. Raskolnikov discovers this the hard way. He thought he could commit the murder, walk away, and be fine. He thought conscience was for weak people, for people who had not thought things through. But conscience does not care what you think. It is older than thought, deeper than reason, and it does not argue. It simply makes you feel the weight. Here is what that weight feels like. You wake up at 3 a.m. Your chest is tight. Your mind is running. You are not thinking about tomorrow's tasks. You are not planning. You are accounting. For the thing you said that hurt someone, for the choice you made that you cannot undo, for the version of yourself that you betrayed. And the accounting is not rational. It is not a clean list of debits and credits. It is a feeling, a pressure, a sense that something is unbalanced and will stay unbalanced until you do something about it. Dostoevsky believed that this inner tribunal was not a bug in human psychology. It was a feature. It was the part of you that knows before your intellect catches up, when you have violated your own moral architecture, and it will not let you rest until the violation is addressed. Raskolnikov spends the novel trying to outsmart this tribunal. He makes arguments, he finds precedents, he justifies, but the tribunal does not respond to arguments. It responds to truth, and the truth is simple. He killed someone, and he knows it was wrong. Everything else is noise. A psychologist named Brené Brown spent years researching guilt and shame. She found that guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt can be repaired. Shame believes it cannot. Raskolnikov is caught between the two. Part of him feels guilt, a specific remorse for a specific act. But part of him is slipping into shame, the belief that he is fundamentally corrupted, that there is no way back. And shame, unlike guilt, does not want confession. Shame wants hiding. So he isolates, he withdraws, he becomes unreachable. And the inner tribunal gets louder because silence is not the same as innocence. And the mind knows the difference. Notice where your body touches what is beneath you. You are held. You do not have to hold everything yourself. Chapter 9. Suffering as purification.
All right, y'all. I enjoyed the lesson we learned today. I will be back for more. If you enjoyed the lesson, please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know that this content is useful for you. I know it's useful for me, but if it's useful to my listeners, I will do more. Y'all have a beautiful day. Don't let the trolls win. Don't promote negativity. Be the best version of yourself and always look in the mirror. Have a beautiful day.